Does anyone know that big old franchise that's been going on for 10 years? Well, it's that franchise that's made $2 at the box office, so I'm gonna talk about it because I'm unoriginal. You know what franchise it is? Have you ever seen a movie in this franchise? You probably have. Because it's... the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's been going on for 10 years and it's made a whole bunch of money. I don't know how, or how they managed to do it. It's still the one franchise that has set up a cinematic universe successfully. Everyone else has just kind of fallen on their faces. You got The Mummy. I mean, like, look at that movie. I've never seen it because I thought it looked bad. And the best part about it was when they released the trailer that didn't have any audio. DC, yeah. Rubberface. Yeah. But what made this franchise so good? I don't know, maybe characters that are interesting. They built up every single character that they created. There's Iron Man. You know who Iron Man is. He knows who Iron Man is. There you go. And they have fun plots and interesting storylines. You know, villains aren't that great, but they have interesting storylines that make people want to keep coming back. So let's go through every Marvel Cinematic Universe movie from Iron Man to Ant-Man and the Wasp, which just came out. Now before we start, just a fair warning, spoilers for every single Marvel Cinematic Universe movie with the exception of Ant-Man and the Wasp. So there are Infinity War spoilers. Iron Man's pretty awesome. There's lots right about Iron Man. There's the Tony Stark redemption arc, which is pretty good. Him as a character is just amazing. Like, the first 15 minutes is just characterization. It's all that is. Like, just watch this.
The best thing about Tony is also the worst thing. He's always working.
Like, that just shows his character, like, in just a brief thing. It doesn't tell you who he is, it shows you. The villain isn't horrible. I mean, it's, at the end it is a big robot Jeff Bridges versus Iron Man. And Tony Stark is a memorable character. There's a drastic difference between his starting point and where he ends up at the end of Infinity War. And where other studios fail at this point is just they don't build up a successful character. They focus more on the universe. While this movie does focus on the universe, there's still that little tease at the end. I didn't even know that tease was there until after the Avengers came out.
Who the hell are you? Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm here to talk to you about the Avenger Initiative.
So, this movie just successfully made itself a movie and was able to build a franchise off of it. So, where does it rank? Well, it's the only MCU movie, so it's the best and the worst. Okay, what's next? Yeah, it's pretty alright. It's just kind of bland. There's some cool stuff in it. Edward Norton isn't 100% the best. Mark Ruffalo's better. The CG's pretty alright. Fun fact about the CGI is that one of the visual effects artists, or visual effects people, is Colin, who occasionally shows up on Red Letter Media. He tweeted out some photos of him on the set of this movie. That's pretty cool, right? Yeah. There is some fun action, and the Tony Stark cameo is pretty cool. It's the only Marvel movie to put the end credit scene before the credits. The final Hulk battle is pretty fun, and there's lots of fun, just two big monsters just hitting it out, even though they both look the same. But I don't think that has anything to do with the CG artist, just art design. But it's not as good as Iron Man. I'll say that. That's where it's gonna rank. So what's next? I like Iron Man 2. It's not the best. It's also not the worst. It is a big trailer for the Avengers. It sets up Black Widow. It has Nick Fury in it again. It sets up the Avengers Initiative. It is a big trailer, and it doesn't stand on its own as well as the first one.
I don't think I want you looking at that. I'm not sure it pertains to you anymore.
And this kind of falls into the trap of where other movie studios try to start off, is by making Iron Man 2 instead of making Iron Man. But there's some really fun action scenes. The suitcase scene on the highway is pretty fun. And the end battle's great. What isn't an action scene is the Senate hearing early on, which is, yeah. Play it, roll a clip.
I am Iron Man. The suit and I are one. To turn over the Iron Man suit would be to turn over myself, which is tantamount to indentured servitude or prostitution, depending on what state you're in. Can't have it.
Look, I'm no expert.
In prostitution, of course not. You're a senator. Come on.
Well, the acting and characters are well done, and it's better than Incredible Hulk, but it's not as good as Iron Man, so it just places itself right in the middle. So what's next? Thor is fine. Characters are okay. Everything is just mainly okay. The whole thing. There's lots of Dutch angles. It's like you have to tilt your head in order to watch 90% of the movie. Some of the action's kind of fun. The early on fight with the Frost Giants is kind of cool. But it's kind of slow in the middle. And then all of a sudden, after Thor can't pick up the hammer, his arc like happens. Oh, whoops, I just wiped out half the universe. But his arc just kind of happens. He switches on a dime almost. The establishment of Loki and some otherworldly stuff in the MCU is pretty fun. They establish Asgard and all that. So it's better than the Incredible Hulk, but it's not as good as Iron Man 2. What's next? Captain America's lame. Not the movie, just the character. At this point in the game, Captain America's pretty lame. But, that being said, the first act of this movie is some of the best character work since Iron Man. Small Steve Rogers still looks great after, 7 years of aging. Later CG doesn't look good. I have a feeling they put all their budget into making a small Steve Rogers instead of the later stuff, because the later stuff looks iffy. The action isn't super amazing. It's kind of slow at parts. But it has a different ending. Kind of interesting ending. Where he doesn't really win. I didn't like that at first. But I guess I've come to respect it more as time goes on.
You gonna be okay?
Yeah, I had a date.
So I think it's better than Thor, but it's not as good as Iron Man 2. That's where I'm going to stand on that. So what's next? Oh wait, did we just set up all the Phase 1 characters? All of them. Do you know what that means? The Avengers is awesome. The big payoff for Phase 1. Every hero has something to do. What Tony Stark is there for? He's there to scan energy signatures with Bruce Banner. Captain America's previous knowledge on the cube. Thor is Loki's brother. Every character has something to do, and there's some really fun action in this movie as well. Shakespeare in the Park, that's really fun. The final 30 minutes is pretty great when all the Avengers come together. That's just a memorable moment from that movie. It's just a lot of fun. It's just bringing together everyone, and they did it successfully when no one else can. Justice League. Loki has become the fun villain that everyone started to love. He wasn't quite there in Thor, but now he's the fun Loki. The helicarrier is pretty cool. Characters play off of each other really well. This is what a cinematic universe payoff should be. Rewards people for watching the previous movies, tells its own story that unites all these characters, and it's a very simple story. It's like this guy has a cube, We need to find it, bring in the team that can find it, and then they also have the abilities to fight the Avengers. Everything is incredibly satisfying. The last act is entertaining, and bringing together these characters in such a great way is amazing. Best one of the MCU so far. Better than Iron Man. I'm gonna say that. There you go. Alright, so after the Avengers, you gotta go bigger and bigger, right? You just have to, like it was the end of New York, you just gotta go bigger with the next movie? Alright, let's see what's next. Oh, they didn't go bigger. They just told a small story about Tony Stark, that's good. But this is the first completed MCU trilogy. Well done concluding solo story for Iron Man. Even if he's in later movies like the Avengers movies and stuff, it's still, it's a satisfying 3-movie arc for Iron Man. Fun action that's different than the other Iron Man movies. You got a scene where he's trying to catch people out of a plane. Another scene where he's only got part of his suit. He's jumping between suits. There's a lot of fun stuff in there.
Honestly, I hate working here. They are so weird.
So now you're just gonna leave me here, like my dad?
Yeah.
A real fun movie that is a good follow-up to The Avengers. And like I said, it's smaller. Even at the end when there's 30 Iron Man suits running around. It's a smaller film where it's just talking about Tony Stark and his anxiety. And a strong start of Phase 2. Better than Iron Man 2, but not as good as Iron Man. What's next? Thor: The Dark World is dumb. It's a dumb plot with dumb MacGuffin. Thor's pretty boring in this one. He doesn't have much of an arc. I think after the Avengers, people didn't realize what they could do with Thor. But Loki's fun.
I think you missed a Connor.
Shut up!
Other characters are pretty boring. Some of them are somewhat annoying. I think it might be the least impactful film in the whole universe, where it's just a story about an elf dude who just wants to shoot up a blood tornado into some sky holes. It's real dumb. It really is. Like, it's hard to talk about how dumb that this movie is. But as far as I'm concerned, it's because of the fact that it's dumb. It's a bit more entertaining than First Avenger, but it's not as good as Iron Man 2. So what's next? Captain America is cool now. Remember before, Captain America was lame, yet now he's awesome. And this is why. This movie reshaped Captain America. It has a great story, interesting and new characters, great dialogue, biggest solo film impact on the established MCU, and like the collapsing of S.H.I.E.L.D. after S.H.I.E.L.D. has been like the underlying force throughout the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. At this point, even Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was started up. It was like, yeah, S.H.I.E.L.D. is this thing, and now it's not anymore. Something's wrong there. It's an actual surprising story that reinvented Captain America by not reinventing Captain America. It just takes him and makes him cool while still making the character the same, and that allows him to actually become a strong character, both physically and morally. So there's an actual interesting villain. I mean, the Winter Soldier's pretty cool, and there's an emotional connection between Captain America and the Winter Soldier. But there's also Alexander Pierce, the head of Hydra. He's like, some of the best villains in this universe are just guys that just do stuff. Like, he's just an evil dude, and action is pretty great. It's brutal. There's some really great stuff. That highway scene between Captain America and the Winter Soldier is one of the best action scenes in this whole franchise. So, yeah, no, this one's pretty good. It fits right between Iron Man and Iron Man 3. So it's one of the better ones. What's next? I like weird. I like this movie. This movie is weird. Now, it's not fully weird. The ending act is still a space battle with a big ship. It doesn't get as weird as the second one, but it's weird. There's a raccoon man, and there's a talking tree who only says 3 words. And then there's another guy who doesn't understand metaphors. It's just weird. But the music's really great. There's action scenes are awesome. It has its own like voice in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's probably thanks to James Gunn, who manages to separate his movie from all of the other ones by placing it on the other corner of the universe. Everything is weird and everything is cool. A different take on the comic book movie. I think it's better than Iron Man 3, but not as good as The Winter Soldier. That's where I'm gonna put it. What's next? The next big Marvel payoff. But not really. Age of Ultron has its moments. Good character work. There's some new characters that are interesting, except for Quicksilver, which is I guess why they killed him off. They made Hawkeye interesting, so there you go, that's a positive. Ultron is nowhere near as good as Loki, but is still better than most Marvel villains. There's loads of fun action. The Hulkbuster vs. Hulk fight is just great.
Go to sleep, go to sleep.
I'm sorry.
And the final battle is with the Avengers is cool too. It's not as big of a movie as the first one, which I guess is why it's kind of disappointing to some people, where it's a bit more dumb. The pacing isn't top notch. There are scenes where it just acts like a trailer to the other movies that are coming out. It acts like a trailer to Civil War and to Black Panther and to Thor Ragnarok. It's not as much of a showstopper as it is just another brick in the larger puzzle. But I think it's better than Iron Man 2, but not as good as Iron Man 3. So it's not as big of a movie as the first Avengers. Ant-Man. Paul Rudd is fun. Shrinking is fun. There's lots of fun shrinking stuff, and Paul Rudd has his moments. The rest of it looks like a TV show. There isn't really a distinct voice, unlike some other MCU films. It's just a movie. Like, I would have to Google the director. Like, I don't have to Google the director of Winter Soldier or Guardians, but I would have to Google the director of this movie because it doesn't feel like it has a real voice. The stuff that does have a voice is like an Edgar Wright movie, and he was fired, so eh. But it does have a smaller scale, which coming off of the big Age of Ultron is definitely a good thing. And it's a decent enough end to Phase 2. Nothing inherently special or unique other than shrinking.
Look at the girl I'm with. You know what I'm saying? She's crazy, stupid, fine, right? The bartender's all like, yeah, crazy, stupid, fine.
So it's, I'd say it's better than Thor 2, but not as good as Iron Man 2. So that's the end of Phase 2, and we just did another Avengers movie. So what's next? Oh, it's the better Avengers sequel than the Avengers sequel. I made a video on Civil War, and if there's any Prime's Mediocre Films video that I would want to take back, it'd probably be that one. It's better than I remember it being. Honestly, I watched it again, and it's pretty fun. There's a legitimate argument between two sides. Think about it as like there's pros and cons to both sides. There isn't really a right answer. Except for Captain America's side, he's right. There are two likable characters that have decent enough continuity between movies. Even at this point, Tony Stark has become such a different character between the start of Iron Man and now. Like, before he was the Merchant of Death, he didn't care.
And what do you say to your other nickname, the Merchant of Death?
That's not bad.
He cares that one guy died when he was saving other people.
He wanted to make a difference, I suppose. I mean, we won't know because we dropped the building on him while we were kicking ass.
And it kind of throws him off. Like, it's completely different than where he started off, and it's completely believable because it's been 8 years at this point. The action is pretty cool. The airport scene's fun. The final battle's fun. Black Panther's pretty cool. You didn't really need the Solo movie. You kind of could have just had him here, but then again, the Solo movie made all of the money in the world. Spider-Man is great.
Those wings carbon fiber?
Is this stuff coming out of you?
That would explain the rigidity-flexibility ratio, which, gotta say, that's awesome.
I don't know if you've been in a fight before, but there's usually not this much talking.
All right, sorry, my bad.
After this movie, I was really excited to see the Solo film, and the final action scene has some emotional weight behind it. Pays off better having seen Infinity War, because after this it feels like, oh, they're gonna be all friends at the end. It's like, no, everything's ruined. I'd say it's better than Iron Man 3, but not as good as Guardians. I'm gonna say that. So what's next?
Whack.
This movie's weird, and as I said, I like weird, so when this goes full on like an LSD acid trip or something, it goes weird. It's visually really interesting, but most of the characters are boring. I mean, Wong is fun.
Yeah, you know, you really should have stolen the whole book because the warnings come after the spells. Oh, it's funny.
Doctor Strange isn't very likable in the first half, but he does get better, and he's a lot better in Infinity War. Action's pretty alright. It's just firecracker kung fu, which is a little disappointing. Doctor Strange has a lot more fun stuff to do in Infinity War. It is basically Iron Man with magic. There's a fun ending scene.
Dormammu, I've come to bargain. 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 Dormammu, Dormammu, Dormammu. No, I've come to bargain.
It's a different ending than most of these movies where all of them are, it's the end of the world, and it's this one, it's reversing time. The city's putting itself back together, and then at the end he bargains for Earth instead of fights the big bad guy. There's some fun time travel stuff. Overall, it's pretty okay. I think it'd fit right between Ant-Man and Iron Man 2. It's pretty alright. What's next? Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is weird, and I like weird. It's even more weird. It's loads of fun, there's lots of heart, lots of comedy. It stands out from other MCU films. It even kind of stands out from the first one. It just has such a distinct personality to it, and that's probably because it's James Gunn. It visually looks a lot different than all of the other Marvel movies, and it's just James Gunn perfects the characters and advances them further. Like Yondu? Yondu's awesome. He just is.
You look like Mary Poppins.
Is he cool?
Hell yeah, he's cool. I'm Mary Poppins, y'all!
And then he dies. And it's sad. But then again, he probably would have turned to dust anyway. So, shots are really well done and better than most MCU films. It's the most visually interesting one. There are some really cool looking shots in this movie. And it's a big step up from some lesser hitters recently. Like even if Civil War, I like Civil War more, but it's not as amazing. Doctor Strange is pretty alright. Avengers 2 and Ant-Man are pretty alright. And then this one's just boop, yay! So after the 4-movie fatigue, Guardians 2 finally brought everything back. There's lots of great music and song choice, and sometimes the score shines through, which is rare in a Marvel movie. It's better than the first, but I don't think it's as good as Winter Soldier. So what's next? So, the trailer came out for this, and I thought it looked real not very good. And then another trailer came out, and it ruined the whole story. And then I saw the movie, and it was really solid. It was another strong hit in 2017. I think it's probably the best portrayal of Spider-Man after, 15 years of getting Spider-Man movies. Lots of great humor, some fun little Easter eggs hidden about, great characters that play off of each other. Iron Man is used sparingly and very well. He just kind of shows up a couple times. And the one thing that was great about it is that it had a really unexpected twist. Like, did anyone see it coming when the bad guy was her dad?
He must be Peter.
That was great, but that's probably because Marvel doesn't do twists like that. Except for the Mandarin, and everyone hated that, even though I thought that was great.
My name's Trevor Slattery.
And one of the best things this movie has going for it is that it's an accurate portrayal of high school. It actually looks like a high school and kind of functions like one. Most of the other movies are written by 50-year-olds who haven't been in high school in a long time and they don't know how it works, and then it's just really awkward and they're trying to be with the times, and then this one doesn't do that. It's one of the better MCU movies. I think it fits right between the two Guardians movies. So what's next?
Whack.
I know I already used that joke, but this movie's weird and bizarre, and I like weird, and I like that they're going more weird. I think this is comedic genius. Korg is awesome.
Oh, well, I tried to start a revolution but didn't print enough pamphlets, so hardly anyone turned up, except for my mum and her boyfriend, who I hate. Piss off, Ghost! He's freaking gone. Hey, man. I'm Korg. This is me. We're gonna jump on that spaceship and get out of here. Wanna come?
The fact that they changed Thor up is also really great. Like, right off the bat, he's just a completely different character, which really helps him after him being pretty boring in Thor 2 and Age of Ultron. And there's some really fun scenes. Some of the comedy is just awesome. It's apparently like 70-80% improvised, which is great because it doesn't feel improvised. Makes some of the characters interesting. Hulk is used in a fun way. He's just a big 2-year-old baby, which is fun.
You're being a really bad friend. You bad friend. You know what we call you? No. We call you the stupid Avenger. You're tiny Avenger. What are you, crazy? Yes.
Fun banter between all the characters. There's a fun but generic villain with a generic plot. That is true. She just wants to rule everything, but she's hamming it up and she looks cool. And that's better than just being an elf dude who wants to shoot up a blood tornado into some sky holes. And there's a clever enough ending. They don't stop Ragnarok, they cause it, so that's fun. And there's lots of great humor and action. Some of the cinematography is pretty great. There's some really cool looking shots. This one in particular. And I think it fits right between Spider-Man and Guardians 2. So 2017 was a really strong year for Marvel. 3 hits in a row. Let's see if they can keep it going for 2018. Now, everyone loves this movie. I know why everyone loves this movie. It is an important movie, and I don't know if I can say anything because I'll be called a racist if I say I don't like it, but I do like it. I just don't think it's amazing. It has some not so great pacing issues. Like, all of the reveals come like somewhere in the middle when you could have like kind of doled out the information a bit earlier on, and that way we'd be more interested, because the first hour is kind of tedious. So if you had given one of the reveals at the start, it would have helped out that first hour and make it a bit more interesting, because there's something that's on the back of your mind the whole movie. Some of the characters aren't great. Some of the acting's really good, but the characters aren't amazing. Black Panther isn't as interesting as he was in Civil War, but the villain's pretty good, and there's something that's interesting there is that he changes the hero's mind, which is different. But there's the CG is already dated on the day it came out. Some of the action scenes are fun, even though they look fake. Obviously an important movie in today's cultural climate and whatever, but it's still a dumb comic book movie and nothing more. It's a disappointment after the last 3 hits. I think it fits right between Ant-Man and Doctor Strange. We haven't gotten an Avengers movie in a while. Feels like we should get one of those. The biggest culmination ever. While the first Avengers had 5 movies to pay off, this one has 18, and it does it, and it balances out every single character. It's a huge success. It's like big. It's like Black Panther was kind of a little misstep right there that made a whole bunch of money. But it's like they're back with another hit. They come back with Thanos as an interesting villain. It's his movie. He has the most screen time of any of the characters. And heroes meeting and playing off of each other is satisfying. I mean, like Iron Man and Doctor Strange is pretty great. The Guardians and Thor, and then Guardians and some of the Avengers, and there's loads of fun stuff like that in this movie. And the ending is unexpected and shocking because this is a studio that normally plays things safe, and then at the end of this movie, the villain wins and all of them turn to dust. Even if Avengers 4 sucks next year, this one pays off enough where I think it'll stand on its own. It'll still be a pretty great movie even if the next one is complete garbage. I have my faith in these writers and these directors. They got 3 solid movies so far, and it's a satisfying beginning of the end for the MCU. Even if they continue to make movies for the next 50 years, it's a satisfying beginning of the end for this era of the Marvel Universe. And I'm going to be a bit ballsy and say that this is now the best movie of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm going to say that, because it just pays off everything so well, and it's just, it works. So, what's next? Yeah, it's pretty alright. It's better than the first Ant-Man. Lots of cool shrinking and growing stuff. The building was pretty cool. The shrinking and growing cars and stuff, you know, the actual action scenes are pretty fun. There's a decent amount of expansion of what was known after the first movie, so knowledge about different things that was established in the first movie is expanded in the second one, so that's cool. Characters have fun dialogue. There's some really good jokes, and others don't land very well, which is a little disappointing. But it's definitely a fun film with loads of fun stuff in it, and it looks less like a TV show this time. It looks more like an actual movie that could, that has some interesting looking shots that aren't just in the CG action scenes. Michael Pena as Luis is still awesome. There's even some more good stuff with him in this movie. Overall, it's better than the first, but with less good jokes, because not everything lands 100%. So I think I'm going to squeeze it between Black Panther and Ant-Man, but it might switch places with Black Panther, because I only did just see it. It's a early opinion. So what's next? Oh wait, nothing's next. Well, there's now been 20 Marvel Cinematic Universe films in 10 years. So what's next for them at this point? Well, coming out next year is Captain Marvel, which I think would be fun. It's gonna be a prequel set in the 90s, I think, so that could be interesting. There's another Spider-Man movie, even though he died, so we'll see how that works out. But the winner that takes the cake is Avengers 4. I'm looking forward to seeing how we'll be able to follow up Infinity War, how everything fixes itself or not, and whatever happens there. I'm interested to see what's coming next. And of the movies that haven't been confirmed by Marvel, we got Guardians of the Galaxy 3, probably Black Panther 2, and Doctor Strange 2. And probably a whole bunch of new properties that some so-called diehard fans will have to Google, including me. Well, there we have it, a summary of the Marvel Cinematic Universe up to this point. Now I guess it's time to make real videos again. I'll just get started. Boom, boom, boom into existence or whatever. Prime? Yeah. What did you just do? I snapped 3 times. In a video about Marvel, you snapped your fingers. You made a joke about snapping out half the universe, and now you've done it. I have? Yo, Prime, I don't feel so good. B? Oh, dude, this sucks, man. What have I done? It seems you've wiped out the entire universe. You snapped 3 times. Everyone but you has been turned to dust. Or really more of a liquid thing. That effect was weird. Why aren't you dead? Well, we're in different universes, so it doesn't affect me. Oh, well, note to self, don't snap again. So how do we fix this? Well, after months off, it's time for the Prime of Grammar to come back and be a hero. You're the worst hero. I know. Lol, I copied Avengers. Tune in next time. I'll see you guys later or whatever.